Okay, very good. So in the last class, basically we finished with concepts, everything binary. Okay. And we are done with tissue culture. Okay, so I asked you to go and read about flowers and seeds because in today's class we will be starting with the sexual reproduction in flowering plants, correct? Yes? Say something, yes or no? Yes, Alia, you are saying something?
Yes, sir, you asked us to read it.
Okay, so please do one thing. When like if I'm asking, you have to say, because I think that my voice is gone or you are not able to hear me or something like that. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Okay, welcome Fatima Munir. You just joined in. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Sorry, sir. They actually sent me the link for a math class, but it said your
Yeah,
name.
yes.
And I signed it. It's a
Yes,
math.
yes. I also got the same link first.
Yeah.
And you and me both were, I think, in someone else's class. I would have loved to study some maths, but then I had to teach you biology. So I came out. Okay.
Do you teach math also?
So I teach everything, but every teacher has an expertise. So I don't teach maths because maths, I just studied maths till my BSc, that also in the first semester in my bachelor's of science. After that, like in biology, you do the kind of maths you need to do biological research is very limited. It is mostly statistics and probability and some analytical things, majorly statistics and probability. So
That is all in genetics, right?
yes, that's all biology needs. So the kind of mathematics that you need for biology, that I know, but I do not teach that as a subject because that is not my expertise. So my expertise is biology and organic chemistry. Okay. Okay, so you can ask me things if you have any doubts, as I told you, related to things which are not strictly from biology, but related to it somehow, kind of suppose you are doing some genetics and you figured out how does these ratios come out. You must have been seeing ratios like 9:3 is to 3 is to 1, something like that, right? So all those things we can discuss. Anyways, we will discuss it as we'll go to genetics. Okay, so let's begin today's class. Any doubts? Fatima, Alia, Fatima, Munir, and Arpit?
No, sir.
Fatima, do you have a nickname or something? Or Fatima, Munir, do you have a nickname or something? No?
I do, but like
You
only
would
my
not,
friends.
yeah, you would not like me to address you with that name in the class, right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Nicknames are mostly not very useful. Yeah. I have many embarrassing nicknames. Okay. So anyways, let's begin with today's class. Any doubts before we begin today's class? Anything you want to ask me? Yes? No? Something?
No, sir.
No? Okay. So in today's class, we will be starting with flowering plants. Let's first try to understand why do we call something as a plant which is flowering. From class 11th, you have studied in class 11th, the plant kingdom, right? Everyone has studied plant kingdom.
Yes, sir.
So in plant kingdom, you must have studied that after kingdom, the word we use for plants is division. Like in animals, we do kingdom and phylum. In plants, it is division. And there are many divisions of plant. Then there are class, order, family, genus, and species. You must have read about gymnosperms, right? Pteridophytes, bryophytes, gymnosperms. At the end, you must have read about something called angiosperms, correct? And you must be knowing that angiosperms are those plants which actually produce flowers. So we call them flowering plants, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, by knowing this, one thing is clear, that all the plants do not flower, right? That's why we call some plants specifically as flowering plants, but not all, because all the flowers do not produce, sorry, all the plants do not produce flowers. So does it mean that apart from angiosperms, in other plants, there is no sexual reproduction happening? Does this mean that? Yes or no? Does it mean that only flowering plants are capable of sexual reproduction? Because we know
No,
that,
sir.
no, then other plants
Yeah.
also do sexual reproduction, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, so it is possible without a flower to do sexual reproduction, correct?
Yes, sir.
So what is the characteristic feature? Because this is also a neat question. So what is the defining feature that if you find that in a plant, you will say that this plant has undergone sexual reproduction? It is clearly not flower then. Okay. You yourself said that flower, even if plants don't have flowers, still there can be sexual reproduction. So what is the feature which you see and say that this proves that there was sexual reproduction?
Fertilization.
But you cannot see fertilization as a feature, can you?
Gamete
Fertil-
formation.
Can you see gamete forming in a plant?
Yes, sir. Formation of pollen.
How do you see formation of gametes? It is not a visual feature, right? Formation of gamete is something which is happening inside the organ. In a plant and in animals, it is happening inside the female reproductive system, correct? You clearly do not see gamete formation. So what do you see? Which feature do you see which actually tells you that it is a sure shot sexual reproduction? Any idea?
Seeds.
Exactly. Who was this very happy fellow? Fatima. Yes, Fatima. Very happy with seeds, no? Correct. Seeds actually are the features that tells that if there is a seed formation, seed must be containing an embryo inside. And if there is an embryo inside, it must have occurred as a result of zygote formation, which Arpit was saying. And if there is a zygote, it must have happened because of fertilization. So everything you can just assume that it must have happened because there is a seed which contains an embryo inside. So do you understand why flowering plants are important? Is because they have a very vivid and elaborate anatomy and morphology to do sexual reproduction. And they are the best model systems in which we can study sexual reproduction in plants. That's why we will focus on flowering plants, but seed formation is also possible in other plants, non-flowering plants like gymnosperms. Remember, gymnosperms produce naked seeds, class 11th, plant kingdom.
Yes, sir.
Yes. So this was, if you remember these differences, you will do good in entrance, okay? Because this is very important for you to know. Why are we studying sexual reproduction in flowering plants? Because everything is present here, right from fertilization to, like, right from pollination to seed formation. Okay. Now pollination is absent in gymnosperms because there is no flowers to do that, or even if it is happening, it is happening through non-abiotic agents. Okay. So let's get into the details of flowering plants. Now you all know flower, right? What is a flower? What is a flower?
It is the reproductive part of the
Yes,
plant.
right. So because that you know, because books tell you that, you know, but what is a flower? Did you know that flower is a reproductive part right from the beginning when you were a kid?
No.
You see at a flower and say, oh, this is the reproductive part of the plant. No, right?
No.
So when you see at a flower, what occurs to your mind?
Beauty.
Exactly, perfect. Attraction, right? Everyone,
Yeah.
regardless of who that organism is, if that organism can see colors, or can smell will be attracted towards flowers, correct?
Yes, sir.
And for that, you do not need to know that whether they are reproductive parts or why are they attracting you. You are just attracted. So simply, flowers are the most attractive part of the plant if they produce flowers. And that attraction has a science behind why they attract and who they attract. But first thing is they are the most attractive part. Okay, they are brightly colorful. Again, now you know from books that they are reproductive parts of a plant as well, correct? Now, another question which came in examinations, keep noting these things down. Okay, so if I'm not writing something on the board and I'm discussing with you, you have to note it. I'm sure that you all do it, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect. So my question was,
No, sir.
you don't do it, Arpit?
Sir, you have to tell sir, आप बता दें क्योंकि ये point लिखना है.
Okay, good. Take it. So whatever I talk to you, and if it is important, if I'm saying that this has been asked, this will be asked, please note it down. Okay, Arpit?
Okay, sir.
Okay, cool. So the question was so remember in vegetative reproduction, we studied that there are modified parts of plants, just like modified leaves, modified roots, which are called tubers, modified stems, which are runners, right?
Yes, sir.
So what do you think flower as a structure? Is it a completely different part of a plant or is it a modified something?
It is a modified bud.
Modified bud. Let me tell you one thing. The bud that we discuss in vegetative propagation in asexual reproduction is not the bud that is here. This bud, we just call it.
I'm not saying about that bud. I'm saying about the flower bud only.
The flower bud is the first stage of the flower. So bud also has to come from something, no? There is no structure called bud in itself. Like in a normal plant, when you say roots, stem, branches, leaves, fruits, correct?
So they are the leaves, modified
Yes.
leaves.
Yes, flowers are modified leaves. Perfect. Write it down. This is a neat question, Arpit. Flowers are modified leaves. Actually, bud is also a modified leaf only, because if you see a bud, you will only see the sepals. The green sepals closed inside. When they open from inside, the flowers come out, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So flowers actually are modified leaves. Okay. Good. So let's try to draw one flower. And you will be drawing this alongside me. So keep drawing it with me, one structure at a time, and we'll discuss. So to begin with, we all know that the flower is attached to the branch or the terminal part of the branch with something like this kind of a structure, right? Which keeps on becoming more and more swollen. But this part here, from which the plant is attached to the branch or to the plant, is called receptacle. What is it called? Receptacle. If you say it with me, it will stay in your memory. When you all were in lower classes, junior classes, like preliminary classes, teacher used to make you repeat everything with the teacher, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes. That's not actually a bad way to learn or to conduct classes, but we cannot do it for everything, but for some things we do it. So this is receptacle. The receptacle is also at many places, you read it as peduncle. Peduncle. Okay. Peduncle or receptacle. Now, after the receptacle, there is this swollen part from where the sepals arise. You know sepals, the green leaf-like parts.
Yes.
So there are multiple sepals, and when these sepals were closed, this was the bud. Okay, Fatima. Sepal. Say yes or no?
Yes, sir.
We also called sepal as calyx. In many books, they write it as calyx. So calyx and sepal is the same thing, no difference. And sepal or calyx is the outermost layer, and there is a word used for layer in plants which is called whorl, WHORL. So the outermost whorl or the first layer of a flower is sepal or calyx. So when it was bud, all you could see was the sepals, nothing else. From inside the sepals, you actually see that colorful structures like this arise, right? There are brilliantly colorful structures. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Bear with my drawing skills. I'm not very good at it, but you know what are these? What are these?
Petals.
Yes, they are petals, or in some books or in exams also sometimes in entrances they write them as corolla. So calyx and corolla, or sepals or petals, you can call it anything, okay? And petals are the second layer. So when the bud opens, first the sepal opens. From inside the sepal, what comes next? Which layer you have to go next? Petals. So this is the second whorl. Write down the second layer, the second whorl, the same spelling. But the most important thing for which we are studying plant is this structure. So this swollen part actually is called ovary. Okay, what is this called?
Ovary.
Okay. And it forms an elongated tube-like structure which is called style. And this style ends with a structure like this, which is called stigma. Okay. Now, stigma, style, and ovary together, all three together, makes the female structure, the female part, which is known as pistil. Either they are called pistil, or in some books they are called carpel. Both, again, two names for the same structure. Pistil or carpel is the female structure. Is it clear? Stigma, style, and ovary. Yes or no? Say yes or no.
Yes, sir.
Clear? Okay, good. And then there are some male structures which are multiple structures like this in a flower.
In the same flower?
Yeah, I'll tell you. So they are also possible to happen in the same flower. If they are in the same flower, that flower will be called bisexual flower. Is it okay? I told you already. That's why we discussed what is bisexual. If a flower is bisexual, it simply means that the flower has both the sexes present in the same body or in the same flower. So the flower that we just made is an example of bisexual. So this question they sometimes asks in board, draw and explain the structure of a bisexual flower. And sometimes students forget to make both the male and female structures and they lose marks because of this. So this is a bisexual flower. Do you have practicals in your schools in class 10th, 11th, or because of COVID, it could not happen?
In 11th we had.
You had in 11th, but I think in 10th, this part was in 10th, the flower, the sexual part of the flower dissection. Was it a part of your experiment?
Sir, we didn't get it.
No, sir.
You couldn't do it. So normally what they give you a flower called Hibiscus Rosa Sinensis. You have seen Hibiscus flower?
Sir, in younger classes, like I think in 9th or more younger classes than that, they bought the hibiscus flower and they showed us which is the answer and filament.
Yes, right. That is what I'm talking about. So this hibiscus flower is known as China rose. Its common name is China rose. I always used to wonder why they call it China rose, because this is not a rose. Or do people in China think that this is rose? But they call it China rose. One more important, Hibiscus Rosa sinensis is a bisexual flower. This is an example of a bisexual flower because, as Fatima herself told, they used to show which is the anther and which is the stigma, correct? They used to show both the organs from the same flower. Yes, Fatima? Right?
No, nothing.
No? They did not used to show you both the organs from the same flower?
No, they did show. They did show both of them.
Okay, but you didn't. You are not saying this. But in Hibiscus Rosa sinensis, both male and female parts are present. Okay, so it is an example of bisexual flower. Just remember. Okay, just because we have started the discussion about Hibiscus Rosa sinensis, I just want to ask you one thing. You all have studied about scientific names. A lot of scientific names were in your textbooks in 10th class, 11th class, 9th class also. Remember in 11th class, you studied about something called binomial nomenclature? Homo sapiens, right?
Yes, sir.
Panthera leo for lion.
Yeah.
Panthera tigris for tiger. So every name had two words. The first word was for the genus and the second word was for the species. And we used to call it a binomial nomenclature. But here in Hibiscus Rosa sinensis, do you see there are three words?
Yes, sir.
So this is clearly not binomial nomenclature, no? In some books you will find Hibiscus Rosa only. So if it is written Hibiscus Rosa, then the word hibiscus, anyways, the word hibiscus is for the genus, okay? The word rosa is for species. What is the word sinensis for? Any idea? It is for the subspecies. Because evolution is happening, right? We are still undergoing evolutionary processes. And both plants and animals are actually those who belong to the same species also. Because of their different geographical locations or because of different varieties that are developing or because of environmental factors, the species also are becoming slightly different from each other. Now that difference is very, very minute. It is not such a major difference that two subspecies cannot reproduce together. They can, okay? So the definition of species used to be, remember, class 11th. How do we used to define species? Anyone? Fatima, Alia, Arpit? Anyone? How do we used to define species? What was the definition of species? Define species a one marker, the most common question in one marker from the chapter classification. Define species. Forgot. No. Species was write down. Species is defined as, so if you are forgetting things, I'll make you write it down again and I'll give you assignments going back to class 11. So if you do not want to keep going to class 11th, after I told you, go back yourself and revise things. Write down. Species is defined as a group of closely related organisms. A group of closely related organisms which are capable of reproducing among themselves, among themselves naturally and produce fertile offsprings. Fertile. What is fertile means? What does fertile means? Fertile offsprings. Fertile. What is fertile? People. This land is very fertile. This land is infertile. Fertile means the offsprings that can make gametes and can reproduce again in nature. Is it okay? Do you understand, everyone? Am I audible?
Yes.
See, when you stop responding to my calls, I think that, either I'm not audible or either the call is disconnected. So you understood what is fertile?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes. So the definition says that organisms which are capable of reproducing among themselves and naturally, because artificially we can make many organisms reproduce. We just need to take one animal's sperm, the other animal's ovum, and do artificial fertilization, right? That is called in vitro fertilization. All these terms we will study later in human reproduction. But those organisms which reproduce in nature normally, and then they produce fertile offsprings, which can again go and reproduce later on, are called a species. They belong to one common species. Human is one species because howsoever different we see, we look from each other. Like if you see human living in different geographical regions on the planet, they are very, very different, in appearance wise, and hair texture, skin color, heights, weights, etc. Right? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
But still every human is capable of reproducing with any other human from any other part of the planet because we belong to the same species. We have a reproductive compatibility. That is how we define a species. But nowadays, even the species are getting slightly different from each other because of evolutionary changes happening in them over time. So Hibiscus rosa sinensis, the word sinensis is for subspecies, and this type of nomenclature, which is now emerging, is known as trinomial nomenclature. What it is known as? Trinomial. Is it clear?
Yes.
So just remember this, that what is trinomial nomenclature? Tri means,
3.
so we use 3 names to give the overall scientific name of an organism. Anyways, coming back to the plants. Now, look here, the male. So this pistil or carpel is the female part. We mention it as the female. So this is the female part. Now you see here, this structure is called a stamen. Now stamen has 2 parts. The topmost part is called anther, and this part is called filament. Filament is just like a filament. As the word says, it is a thread-like structure. And anther and filament together are called the male reproductive structure or stamen. So one word given is stamen, or you can also call this as Androasium. Androasium. CIUM. Now the word andro always is associated with males. Is it clear? Write down in your terminology section, the word andro is always associated with males, male characters, or male sex, basically. Is it clear, everyone?
Yes, sir.
And pistil and carpel is also known in many books. It's written as Gynoasium. Gynoasium. You know what does the word gyno or gyne is related to? I think you all know.
Yeah.
You know that females, when they are like anything that is related to childbirth or anything related to the reproductive tract of the female or the urinary tract of the female, which is basically fused together, they always go to a doctor called gynecologist, right? Females
Yes, sir.
go to gynecologist. Now, gyne is for female reproductive system and logy is for study. So gynecologists are those who are experts or who study the female reproductive tract. So they are called gynecologists. Is it clear? So write down the word
Yes.
gyno or gyne, N-A-E or N-O. Gyno or gyne is always related to female sex or female reproductive parts. First few pages, I hope everyone's copy has the first few pages as the terminology section, right? Correct? Yes or no?
Yes, sir. So,
Okay. Good. So the male and a female part is clear, right?
Sir, can you
Apart-
pronounce the other name for receptacle?
Receptacle, peduncle, P-E-D-U-N, peduncle,
Thank you, sir.
P-E-D-U-N-C-L-E. Okay. It's also known as peduncle or receptacle. Some books also called it one more thing. If you people find out, let me know. I'll tell you when. So it's in my head, but it's not. Pedicel, yes. Pedicel. Yes. This is also CLE, right? Or CLE? Yes, CLE. Sorry. Pedicel or pedicle. Thank you, Arpit. So these three things are basically the attaching structure which attaches the flower to the plant. Now, after the peduncle or pedicel or receptacle, this swollen part in which ovary is present. So this black part that I have made is ovary, okay, inside. But see, there is some tissue here also, right? Which is over the ovary. Over the ovary. Yes. This part which is over the ovary is called thalamus. And thalamus is a very important part from plant biology's perspective, because I will tell you, a lot of questions come on thalamus. Thalamus give rise to false fruits. Now, what is false fruits? We'll discuss later, but just write down thalamus. Thalamus is this part. So I hope all of you have drawn this and everyone has drawn. Yes, yes, Arpit.
Sir, thalamus is the part between the pedicel and ovary.
No, it's not the part between the pedicel and ovary. It sometimes is also around the ovary. So if you see any flower, a flower looks like this. So this swollen part, if you cut it with a blade, you will see that there is ovary inside and there are surrounding tissues. So often books write it as the part between pedicel and ovary is thalamus. So you will think that this part here, where my cursor is hovering right now, is thalamus, right?
Yes.
Yes. But it's from here to here. This part is thalamus, the swollen part. You understand?
Okay. Yes, sir.
It also can be above the ovary, but it is not the ovary. It is the part which is a different tissue, thalamus. Clear,
Okay, sir.
Arpit?
Yes,
Okay.
sir. Yes.
Good, nice job. So everyone has drawn the flower. Any doubt with the flower?
Sir, it gives rise to what fruits?
False fruits. You
False
can just write down. Thalamus gives rise to false fruits. Not only thalamus, not only thalamus. Thalamus, peduncle, or pedicel all can give rise to false fruits. Once we will come to false fruit, you will understand what I am saying. But for now, just know that thalamus is an important part and where it is. Okay.
Yes,
Now, this Androasium is regarded as the third layer. Remember, the first layer was sepals. Then sepals open comes the petals. Then petals opens. Then comes, if it is a bisexual flower, then comes the Androasium. So in a Hibiscus Rosa flower, you will see that there are multiple anthers, multiple stamens arranged around the female part. So the third part is the Androasium, and the fourth layer, which is the innermost layer, is the Gynoasium. Just write it down. It has been asked once. You should know the layers. Okay, clear everyone?
Yes, sir.
Everyone has drawn the diagram also?
yes, sir.
Okay, now let's start writing something about the flower, which is important. Write down. Flower is a specialized structure. Flower is a specialized structure. In brackets, write down modified leaf. Modified leaves. Then bracket closes. Found in angiosperms. Found only in angiosperms. And contains plant reproductive organs. And contains plant reproductive organs. Now come to the first layer, layer 1, which is sepals or calyx. Stop me if I'm going fast anywhere and if you are lagging.
Sir, can you repeat what you just said?
What I just say, like regarding flowers or sepals?
I don't remember. No, not regarding flowers.
Okay, so I just said that now come to sepals. The outermost layer is sepal. Okay, Fatima, I'm dictating you things about sepal now, important things. So sepal or calyx. These are.
Sir, we have to write it subparts.
Yes, we are just actually writing the different parts of flowers, and something important about everything I'm dictating it to you, because this will help you for boards, right? You also have to give board exams.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. So I also have to give you some written material, no? Correct?
Yes,
In the
sir,
class.
yes.
Yes. So write down sepals or calyx. These are small green leaf-like structures. These are small green leaf-like structures that form the outer wall. This word, wall, that forms the outer wall and act as a support system to the flower. It keeps the flower together. How many of you have seen a marigold flower? We call it genda.
Yes, sir.
Anyone has seen a marigold flower?
Yes, sir, yes.
In marriages and many ceremonies, a lot of marigold or genda is used. So if you take a marigold flower, it has lots and lots of petals, right? Orangish in color, orangish yellow in color, correct?
Yes, sir.
And if you just take out the sepals, then the flower kind of,
Scatters.
Yes. So it shows that sepals actually supports the flower together as a flower. Same is for sunflower or many other flowers, even rose. If you take out all the sepals, the flower, all the petals and all the reproductive structures will just scatter. The only thing which will be left attached still will be the ovary, because that is attached to thalamus and receptacle directly. Is it okay?
So after you remove that, still the flower one more flower can grow? Because the ovary is there.
So sorry, what are you saying? After I remove sepals?
Yeah, and even the petals.
Even
Means
the petals.
after you remove the sepals, the petals will fall off.
Yes,
then
right.
The ovary will be remaining.
Yes.
Then
so it can still fertilize.
And then another flower can grow.
Flowers only grow on the plant from the buds. Flowers cannot grow from pre-existing flowers. So flowers grow into seed and fruit, and the flower is dead. That is the only purpose of flower. Flower is very short-lived in a plant's life. A flower is made, then the flower is flourished, it's open, It's very beautiful. Then fertilization happens and ovary becomes fruit, ovule inside becomes seed, and then the flower sheds off and it dies. In the next season, again the plant starts making new flowers from the beginning. So flowers cannot be made from flowers. Is it clear, Fatima?
Yes, sir.
That is exactly what we will studying in today's class. Okay, so I'll be going in detail of that. But did you write sepal that they are supporting system to the flower? Okay. And write down sepals are located at the base near the stalk. Yes, I remember one thing. It is also called the stalk, this part. The receptacle is called the stalk. Sometimes when we see a rose, so the stalk of the rose is slightly long. Nehruji used to put the stalk. If you want to put it on your coat or shirt or in your hair or somewhere, you put it with the stalk part, right? So the receptacle part elonged is the stalk, correct? So some books write it as stalk. Is it clear, everyone?
Yes, sir.
Next, come to petals or corolla. Petals or corolla. So petals are very, yes, Arpit.
Sir, flowers have fragrance. So, sir, where does that arise from?
Yes, fragrance comes petal. That is what I was going to make you write. Fragrance comes from petals. And sweetness, nectar, also comes from the base. So the base of the petal here. So you know all these. There is a flower. I'm forgetting the name of the flower. It looks like lily, but it has a very long sepal green part, and it has like these are sepals and a long petals like this.
So petunia.
Yes, right. Like petunia, but it is yellow. It's not petunia, and it goes very deep. So many a times bees, you will see bees sitting here, and then the bees go inside to get the nectar. And flowers and birds with long beak also send their beak inside to suck at the nectar, which is present at the base here. It's like a bell-shaped flower, a very long bell. Anyone remembers? It's yellow in color. Try to figure out what's the name. Even it holds true for petunia also. In petunia also. So what we used to do as kids, like I have a very fond childhood memory. It's not fond. I was very, very naughty as a kid, very mischievous. So what we used to do, we used to keep waiting to see a bee entering inside. Okay. And when the bee used to enter inside, we used to close the flower from the outside and pluck it. And then we used to go to a friend and put that flower in the friend's pocket. Now you all know what will happen next, right?
Yes, sir.
The very angry and frustrated bee will come out and sting somewhere. Don't do it.
But that's poisonous.
But that's.
It could be poisonous.
Bee could be, yes. I told you, I was a kid. I was mischievous. I don't do it now because I understand that there is something called bee allergy. There is something called, so someone can have it. But most of the time it was to scare, because everyone knew that if we are putting flour, sometimes we used to put just the empty flour because we could not just have the patience to wait for the bee. It might take hours. So we'll just pretend that we have a flour which contains bee inside and we can use it. So yeah, kids do all these things. But I know why I gave you this example is because some flowers, the petals are bell-shaped. So the nectar they make is always at the very end, because it is the evolutionary tactic of a flower to bring the pollinator or bring the attractor, like whoever is attracted to the flower for the scent or for the sweetness, the nectar should go deep inside. And why the flower wants any organism to go inside? Because the more inside it will go, the more pollen grains will stick to its body. Yes or no? So it will transfer for you pollen grains free. So it is your free FedEx You are just giving it some nectar and it is transferring for you your pollen grains to other stigmas of other flowers. Do you understand, everyone?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay. So write down petals or corolla. These are.
So is it calla lilies?
Is it
Calla lilies?
calla lilies? Yeah. You know, they are also like that, but it's a tree. Lilies do not grow on trees, right? They have smaller plants like a bushy plants. They can be cultured. So this was a tree which I'm talking about. Anyways, but you understood the context why I gave you this example, correct?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Perfect. So come to petals or corolla. These are small, flat. So they are flat. No, not small. They are not small. These are flat, colorful, and large parts. Sometimes they are the largest part. Large parts of the flower. So they are flat like a paper. They are colorful, and they are the large parts of the flower. They form the second layer, the second wall. They form the second layer. Okay. Next point, petals have aroma or fragrance. This is what you were asking, right, Arpit?
Yes, sir.
You know, petals also taste good. For many flowers which are edible, you know, flowers are also edible. There are many
Yes, sir.
flowers. We eat
Yes, sir.
we eat the petal only. So the edible flowers are actually the petal of those
Rose
flowers are edible.
petals also.
Yes, rose petals are also edible. So they are also nutritious. So, or delicious. Not, if not nutritious, they are delicious. So they have great aroma or fragrance. Yes, Fatima, you're asking.
Rose petals are not delicious. They are bitter.
No, but they give a good taste. You know, sometimes
Yes, sir.
we also use some bitter things to add delicacy to our food sometimes,
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
right? So we need all type of taste. For example, if you just eat dalchini is a spice. You know dalchini?
What's the English name?
Yeah, I'm bad with this. It's a bark. It's the actually the bark of a tree. It's very bit like in taste.
Cinnamon.
It is cinnamon. Cinnamon
Okay.
is no cinnamon is cinnamon dalchini. I'm sure. But
Yes,
okay,
sir, yes.
let's take example of cinnamon. So cinnamon is not very good in taste if you just eat a cinnamon, right?
Yeah.
But we use it to make the food aromatic and tasty, correct? The
Yes,
same
sir.
goes for the rose petal. So even if they are not nutritious, they are delicious. So they have great petals, have aroma and fragrance, which attracts insects and other pollinators. And actually, petals are evolved to attract pollinators. That's the whole point of petals. There is no other use of petal for a plant. You know, we may find that rose petal is edible, some other petal can be used for this purpose, but petals were evolved by the plant just to attract other pollinators. And we'll come into details of pollination later on. Okay, write down.
Sir, is
Yes, please.
stalk and stem the same thing?
Yes, Fatima, what is stalk and stem?
Stalk the same thing?
No, biologically they are not same thing, but you know, sometimes in normal languages when we converse, we use stalk as stem, because we also use the word stalk for the rice stem, right? All the monocots, they have a hollow stem, like a straw. So we use the word stalk for them. We also use the word straw for those stems. But stalk and stem are two different biological structures of a plant. Okay, like appendages and leg. Leg is specifically the thing, like leg only holds true for a bipedal. You understand, Fatima? A human can have a leg, but does the concept of leg holds for a dog or a cat? Dogs and cats do not have legs and hands. They have 4 appendages. You can call all of them legs or all of them hands, correct? Yes or no?
Yes.
For
At the
bipedal
front
organisms,
you are-
no, it's not like that. It's never like in a cat, front to our hands and back to our legs. No. For a cat, all are appendages. Because for a cat, it's not that the front two are specialized to do something different from the back two. So you call them hind legs or forelegs, or hind hands or forehands. Both are the same thing for a cat. Only for a human it makes a difference because our hands are anatomically different and specialized to do something differently from our legs. Correct? Yes or no? So stalk and
Yes, sir.
stem are not biologically the same structures. Okay, Fatima? Fatima, Monish?
Okay, sir.
Okay, perfect. Good question. Now, write down. So sepals and petals is done. Now together, write a point for sepal and petals. Write down petals and sepals are the non-essential flower organs. Non-essential flower organs. Whereas stamen and carpels or stamen and pistil. Whereas stamen and carpels are essential floral organs. Are essential floral organs with respect to sexual reproduction. With respect to sexual reproduction. Is it clear? So petals and sepals, like me and Fatima were discussing, even if you take all the sepals and all the petals away, still the pistil can fertilize. But they are accessory organs. They help, but they are not essential. Okay, essential is something without which the process will not happen. Is it clear, everyone? So we call them accessory or non-essential floral parts, and sepals or petals are accessory or non-essential floral parts. Okay, say yes or no, that's clear.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay, write down stamens now. Stamen or Androasium, the third. Let's come to the essential parts now. Stamen or Androasium. So stamens are the male reproductive part. This here, right? They are the male reproductive structures. They form the third layer, the third wall. They form the third layer or the third wall. Each stamen has two parts. Each stamen has two parts. First is anther. Now let's go into the details of anther. Now this part onwards, it is important for entrances. Write down anther. Anther is present at the tip of the filament. I will draw here. Anther is present at the tip of the filament and can either be monolobed. What does the word mono means?
One.
Single.
Yes, monolobed or bilobe. What does the word bi means?
Two.
So this is what a monolobed anther looks like, and this is what a bilobed anther looks like. Is it clear? This is a monolobed anther. This is a bilobed anther. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Now the point is every lobe. Write down next point. Each lobe, whether it is monolobed or bilobed, it does not matter. But each lobe is Dithecus. Dithecus. Di means
2.
and thecus comes from the word theca. Now dithecus, write down. Dithecus means 2 theca present.
Theca means covering, right?
Theca means a kind of a covering, but something which contains, like a wrapping is called theca. A wrapping. And what is, so mostly we gift wrap things that we want to present someone, right? So when you remove the wrap, the main thing which is to be gifted is inside. That is theca.
Sir, even in the Graphian follicle, the theca is there. Even that theca is a wrapping, or it is.
Yes. Yes, that theca is again a wrapping.
Okay.
A wrapping, not like, so that theca is not a wrap. So theca is not disposable. It is exactly not same to the word called wrapping, because wrapping is disposable. The gift is inside, but wrapping is there to protect it, right?
Yes, sir.
So biologically, if any structure has a theca, that theca is not disposable. That is important, because without it, the whatever is inside will not be protected anymore. Okay. So
Then why
dithecus,
can't call it a covering?
yeah, we can call it a covering, but the word theca has been given before. Like, so all these terms that we study basically were not decided by NCERT or some body that was making syllabus for you. So they were named or founded by discoverers, biologists, botanists, correct? So they just named it theca. So each lobe of an anther is dithecus, which means if I draw theca, it is like this. And these theca are present at the opposite ends, at the edges. So for every lobe of the anther, there has to be 2 theca. So if an anther is monolobed, how many total theca will be there?
2.
4. Oh, no, in monologue 1.
2.
How many theca will be there,
Sorry.
Fatima? Fatima gave all the answers, just not the right one. Yes. In a monolobed anther, there will be 2 theca present in that same lobe. In a bilobed anther, how many total theca will be there?
4.
4.
So this was a question which is actually confusing. So question was, a bilobed anther contains how many theca? Okay, so the answer was 2, 4, like that. And people chose 2 because in NCERT it's written that each lobe contains 2 theca, but they're calling it bilobed. So the total number of theca will be 4. The question can also come, and it has come in a way where they have asked, there is a bilobed anther, how many theca will be present per lobe?
2.
So yes, so if you do not read, you do not pay attention to the per lobe part in the end, you will see bilobed, total theca 4. Again wrong. Do you understand? See, entrances are not very difficult because they ask you something you have never heard of or you have never read. Because they ask you questions in a way where you get confused and you cannot pick the right one. Sometimes, just to make an easy answer difficult, what the question will ask you is like, which of the following is not a reptile? So you will see which and reptile, because you are in a hurry, because in an entrance, all you are racing against is time, 3 hours, 180 questions. So basically 1 minute for each question. So let me save time. Oh, this looks a very easy question. Which and reptile? Oh, this is a reptile. You understood?
Yeah.
You also have to read that not, which is not a reptile. So there'll be 3 examples and one which is not a reptile. And also to make that question harder, the options will not be very obvious. So one option will be very obvious. So for example, this is the question. Let me read the options for you. Which of the following is not a reptile? And where is the question? I'm not finding it. Okay, but let's see, the options are like this. First is which not a reptile, snake, newt, something again a very obscure reptile which you have not heard of, and then frog. Which will you choose?
Frog.
Snake.
Frog. Snake is a reptile.
Frog.
Who said snake?
Which is not a reptile. Oh.
Wow. See, you're just making mistakes by hearing the question in class. So pay attention when you are reading it. So not a reptile. Snake is a reptile, obvious reptile. Okay. So most of the time we choose snake because it's an obvious reptile. Second is newt, which is again, can be a reptile. It is a reptile. Then third will also be a reptile you have not heard of. Fourth is frog, which is an amphibian, and clearly it's not a reptile. So you have to choose frog, but it's related. You understand how questions become difficult in entrances? Basically, they are not difficult questions. They are just put in a difficult manner in front of you. Okay. Just like puzzles. So a bilobed anther has 2 theca per lobe. Okay. So each lobe is dithecous. Write down, each lobe is dithecous. Now write down what is theca. Theca are also called, in normal language, it is called pollen sac. So now you understand what is a theca, right? What is sac?
Where the pollen are stored.
No, sac is a bag-like structure. Embryo sac, pollen sac, any kind of sac is like a bag-like structure. Okay. So clearly pollens are present inside the theca. So write down. Haploid pollen grains are formed and stored. Haploid pollen grains are formed and stored in the pollen sac. In the pollen sac. Next point. So I'm writing few things which are important. See, haploid. The word haploid means
1 N.
And
what you can say, one copy of genome. Okay, everyone. And we denote it as a single N, haploid. So all the pollen grains are haploid. Okay. Next, next point, write down. Pollen grains are formed from. Pollen grains are formed from.
excuse me, sir.
Yes,
Sir, theca is applied, sir.
Theca is?
Applied.
Theca is not haploid because it's the structure which contains pollen grains. Now pollen grains are haploid.
Okay.
Theca doesn't have haploid or diploid, right?
No, theca has. See, it has to be, na. Every cell of the body either will be haploid or diploid. So your whole body. Look, think it like this way. In humans, all our body is diploid, right? Every cell, each and every cell present in our brain, in our eyes, in our heart, in our body, in our skin, in our liver, kidney, etc. are diploid. They have two copies.
Gamete cell.
Yes, they have 2 copies of the genome. One copy came from mother and the other copy came from father. Except for the gametes. So females produce ovum or egg cells as gametes. Male produces spermatozoa or sperms as gametes. So these 2 kind of cells are haploid because they have only 1 copy. Similarly, pollen grains are haploid because they are the gamete equivalent for plants. They are the gametes for plants, right? They will go and fertilize. But everything else is the body of the plant, right? Theca or the anther or the lobe or the tissue around, which is thalamus, everything is the body. So it has to have some ploidy. It will be more than 1. So it depends what is the norm. Yes, it will be diploid usually. Or what if the plant's normal ploidy is tetraploid, then it will be tetraploid, but mostly we call it as diploid. Is it clear? So theca will not be haploid, it will be diploid. Okay, Fatima and Arpit?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Write down next point. Pollen grains are formed from. Pollen grains are formed from pollen mother cell, PMC. MMC and PMC. Who was asking in the last class? No, you were not. It was not this batch. Yes, but there is something called PMC and MMC. So pollen grains are formed from pollen mother cell. This is called PMC. Okay. Is it clear?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Next point. Once the pollen grains are fully matured, so when they are fully matured, this theca, which is the covering, it is desiccated and it breaks open. Okay. So when theca breaks open, all the pollens are released in the air, or when an insect comes and lands on the anther, because of the pressure, the theca breaks. So all the pollen grains is stick to the leg of the insect. Is it clear? Make sense?
Yes, sir.
Let's write down when the pollen grains are fully matured, they burst out, they come out from the theca. They come out of the theca. And a mature pollen grain contains, two cells. So in every pollen grain, there are two cells. First is called generative cell. Okay. And the second one is called vegetative cell. Is it clear? Generative and vegetative. There are two cells present in each pollen grain. Is it clear, everyone?
Yes, sir.
Now we'll talk about generative and vegetative cells later on, when we will go to the process of fertilization in plants. But for now, just know that there are two cells in every mature pollen. Okay. And let me make you write one more thing here only. Write down. Later, after the pollination, we have not studied pollination yet, but let me just make you write things here. After pollination, the generative cell, after pollination, this generative cell divides. The generative cell divides to form two male nuclei. Okay. After pollination, this generative cell basically divides, and because if it is one cell, it will be having one nucleus before pollination. Say yes or no, everyone.
Yes,
Yes, sir.
sir.
Yes. Now, I am saying that after pollination, it divides to form two male nuclei. So now there are two nucleus, male nuclei, and this division is mitotic. And if it is mitotic, it is equational, right? You can write down mitotic division, and both these nuclei are haploid, N plus N, which means the generative cell in the beginning was also haploid, correct? Pollen grain is haploid, right? So everything in a pollen grain is haploid. The generative cell is also haploid. It divides and forms two haploid nucleus through mitosis. The vegetative cell is also haploid. Yes, or do you understand it or not? Say yes or no? And now I'm going to tell you one crucial thing. If every pollen grain has two cells and each cell is haploid, isn't the pollen grain diploid? Justify your answer. This is a board's question for 3 marks, CBS. In a pollen grain, there are two cells, both haploid, present together. So why the pollen grain is still haploid, considered haploid? Justify your answer. Write down this question and tell me who will answer.
Sir, can you repeat the question?
Yes, the question is, a pollen grain, a mature pollen grain has two cells, generative cell and a vegetative cell, right? So it has two cells, but still it is considered a haploid structure. Why? Justify. Because if there are two cells, there will be two nucleus. Then how it is n anymore? It is 2n, no? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
But why do we call it haploid still? Any idea? Anyone? Because
Both
these,
of them are haploid.
yes, and both of them are exclusively different from each other. They are separate. So both these nucleus are separately haploid nucleus present in different cells. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
And only one nucleus will fuse, which is generative cell's nucleus. This will fuse and undergo fertilization. The vegetative cell, the only function vegetative cell has is to vegetative cell give rise to pollen tube. It gives rise to the pollen tube. If you know what is pollen tube, okay. If you do not know, I will tell you, don't worry. But vegetative cell gives rise to a pollen tube, but generative cell does the fertilization. So that's why, and both are different cells and both have different separate nucleus. That's why the nucleus still is haploid for each of the cells. So the pollen grain as a whole is a haploid structure. Is it
Sir,
okay?
can you dictate the answer?
Yes, write down. Pollen grain is a haploid structure because both generative cell and vegetative cell, both generative cell and vegetative cell has separate and haploid nucleus. Have separate and haploid nucleus.
Can you repeat?
From the beginning?
Yes.
Then someone has to repeat what I said in the beginning. Yes, Fatima.
Pollen grain is a haploid structure
Yes,
because
both generative cell and vegetative cell has separate and haploid nucleus. Both generative cell and vegetative cell have separate and haploid nucleus.
The answer is not over, right?
No, it's not. Just give me one more. Yes. There was some noise. The answer is not over. Okay, you can still hear me, everyone?
Yes, sir.
Write down the next point. Only the generative nucleus, only the generative nuclei, right? Nuclei, because now there are two. They have divided, like it has divided after pollination. So only the generative nuclei undergoes fertilization, and the vegetative cell gives rise to pollen tube. And the vegetative cell gives rise to pollen tube. Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yes. So the question and answer is clear. Okay. You need to pay attention to questions and answers like these because they are. Sorry. Now, male thing is clear? Like we still will go into details when we will study fertilization that we'll do in next class. But this is clear, right? Any confusion? Any confusion anyone has? Any questions you want to ask me? No? Okay, write down the next point and the last for today is okay, should I start it? We can. Okay, write down pistil or carpel, the female part. Pistil or carpel. It can be called pistil, it can be called carpel, or it can be called Gynoasium. Anything. Now, as you know, the carpel has 3 structures. Okay. So first point about this forms the innermost wall, the innermost layer. This forms the innermost wall. Now it has,
Excuse me, sir.
yes, please.
Sir, wall or layer is the same thing, right?
Yes, right. It's the same.
Okay.
Wall is like a closed layer, because layer can also be open layer, no? Like a cheeseburger. Every layer is just upon top of each other. Understand?
Yes, sir, yes.
But the wall is like a closed layer.
Okay.
So this is the innermost wall. Now it has 3 parts: stigma, style, and ovary. This we will take in detail in the next class, and we'll go to the actual process of fertilization that is happening. So just write down, just look here, just add this thing to your structure, to your diagram. Inside the ovary there is a chamber, okay, about which we will discuss tomorrow. And inside that chamber there are ovules present. Okay, so where should I mention this? Let me mention it. Ovules. Okay, just write down. Inside the ovary are present ovules. Write down. And ovules are future seeds. Okay, write down. Ovules are future seeds, and ovary is future fruit. Is it clear? Ovules and ovaries clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So this is a direct question. What are ovule? Which is a future seed? It is ovule. Which is a future fruit? It's ovary. And when I say fruit, I'm talking about the true biological fruit. There are many fruits in biology which we like, which are our favorite fruits, but they are false fruits, like apple, strawberry. Actually, I have realized that most of our favorite fruits are actually false fruits, like
What
apple,
is false fruits?
yes. So this is your in-home assignment for today. You have to go back and read about seeds and fruits, especially for 3 things: true fruits, false fruits, and parthenocarpic fruits. Write down the in-home assignments. You have to read about what are true fruits, why do we call them true or false, what are false fruits. I'll tell you that apple is a false fruit, strawberry is a false fruit. Okay. And what are, third thing you will read about, what is parthenocarpic fruits. So in tomorrow's class, we will study about the fertilization or the sexual reproduction event in plants. So the overall foundation for it is clear. You know the structures now, you know where what is located. So we are good to go with the how part, how it is happening, how it happens. Any doubts? So it's time, otherwise I'll declare the class.
What is the example of true fruit?
True fruit is mango. Mango is a true fruit. Okay. Now figure out why something is a true fruit and why something is a false fruit. Okay. And let me also tell you, all the vegetables are not vegetables, they are fruits. We call them vegetables because for our ease, biologically, every vegetable is a fruit. Disappointed, no? Confusing. Cool. Okay, so in the next class, we'll discuss more about it and learn, and I'll get you over your disappointment. or I can get you even deeper in your disappointment. Let's see tomorrow. Any doubts, people?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Okay, then see you tomorrow. Take care.
Thank
Bye
you,
bye.
sir.
And